Okay, so in this lesson we're going to look at young people in Nazi Germany. How were young people's lives affected by the rule of the Nazi Party? So education, obviously, is a key feature of young people's lives. And the Nazis indeed did change the national curriculum. They made it one of indoctrination. In other words, students are told what to believe. There's no room for critical thinking or debate about certain truths, in inverted commas, that the Nazis wanted young people to believe. And clearly in identity, in national identity, what's true, what's false, history is a key feature of the narrative of who a people are and what a country is. And history was indeed distorted. Things like the humiliation of Versailles were emphasized about how Germany was treated unfairly by the victorious powers. There was talk of the betrayal of 1918. The inflation of 1923 was used as an example, blaming weak democracy and squabbling parties. And of course, who was to blame? You won't be surprised to learn. Communists and Jews were singled out in particular for blame for Germany's problems in the past, as scapegoats. School lessons. Biology focused on differences between races, with obviously the Aryans, the blonde, blue-eyed Germans, at the top of a pyramid, a hierarchy of races, and other lesser races underneath. This is, of course, scientific nonsense with no basis in genetics or reality, but that was what was taught in biology lessons. It's all very ideological, all a lot of indoctrination. In maths, problems with facts and figures, often about disabled people as well. And here's a particular, this is a real problem, and it's got a very sinister message behind it. The construction of a lunatic asylum costs 6 million marks. How many houses at 15,000 marks could have been built for that amount? Well, the objective of this and other maths questions like this was to show that disabled people were a burden on society and that the healthy and the fit individuals would have to pay for. It's got a very sinister message. Well, if the disabled people, if people with issues and disabilities and problems are a burden on society, well, what are the Nazis hinting at as a solution? Not all young Germans were brainwashed. It didn't have a universal effect on young Germans. Some certainly did buy into the message, there is evidence of that, but some did not. Plenty didn't, in fact, believe everything that they were taught. There were different influences both in and out of school. Of course, peers influence each other. You're possibly very influenced by your friends. You may indeed influence them. There'll be their students' families as well, different beliefs, whether they're from working class backgrounds, their parents were previously socialist supporters, or if their beliefs, they may be Catholic or some other belief, which would influence children's thinking, and maybe it would turn them away from some or all of the ideas of Nazi thinking. Indeed, some who joined the Hitler Youth did not do so particularly out of a love of Nazi ideology, but they used the duties in order to miss school, something I'm sure you would never do. The Hitler Youth, okay, a very, very significant organisation, and one that comes up quite a lot in exams, formed in 1925, or at least the predecessor of what became the Hitler Youth was formed then. After 1933, after Hitler gets the chancellorship, many young people did join voluntarily. It was a popular organisation. Why? Well, partly because it had a lot of leisure pursuits that were previously unavailable. You get a chance to meet and mingle and mix with other young people. It was particularly welcomed in rural areas, as they didn't particularly perhaps have that infrastructure before. Before the Nazis came to power, Catholics and working class social democrat supporters would have youth groups for them, but these were not perhaps always in the rural areas, so the chance to participate, mingle, mix with other young people in fun leisure pursuits, sports and camping, that was welcomed in rural areas, which is also where the bedrock of a lot of Nazi support was. As I already mentioned, things like weekend trips, walking. I know that doesn't perhaps sound like fun to all of you, but there's a big emphasis on the outdoor life, and many young people did really enjoy getting out into nature, and of course the opportunity to play sports. The organisation for girls was the BDM, the League of German Maidens, and again, although the emphasis was on the three Ks, Kinder, Kirche and Küche, and again apologies about my horrible German pronunciation, which means children, church and kitchen. In other words, girls were taught how to be good housewives. It was also, ironically, a chance to break free and out of the home environment, go again and mingle and mix with other young people. The female role model, as I've just described, the good housewife, the good mother, was emphasised, things to do with childcare and family. The Hitler Youth did in fact become compulsory in 1936, and its popularity declined, particularly as discipline tightened. If you have a look at this picture, it doesn't particularly look like a fun activity there, preparing for war and donning gas masks. And in fact, there was a bigger emphasis on things that are not so much fun. Things like military drill and practice, basically preparing the young Hitler Youth members to be soldiers. And leisure time was cut. Well, I'm sure some people might enjoy marching around in uniform, obeying orders, but I know others would not. And certainly, as I said, the popularity of the Hitler Youth declined. The advent of war had an impact on young people, as it of course did on every person in Germany, and ultimately of course many people outside of Germany. Things like playing fields and club buildings were bombed. Youth leaders were called into the war effort. Ultimately, in the fall of Berlin in 1945, very young Hitler Youth members would be conscripted. This boy, I'm not sure how old he is, he looks about 12 years old, clearly very frightened, and many died in the final Battle of Berlin. There was indeed opposition to the Hitler Youth amongst young people as well. Here's a group called the Edelweiss Pirates, and also a group called the Leipzig, again I'm not sure how you pronounce that word, sorry, Mythen, do apologise, perhaps somebody can correct in the video below, comments, and the swing movement as well. So Edelweiss Pirates, the Leipzig Mythen, and the swing movement. The pirates, there were a number of pirate groups. They sort of hung around on parks and street corners, something that young people often still do today, particularly if there isn't enough activities for them to do. Groups, often about a dozen boys and girls. Well, what did they do? I'm not sure what the obsession is with shorts amongst German youth, but I think it's something to do with the great outdoors, that love of the outdoor life. So on the weekends, similar activities actually to the Hitler Youth in many ways. They'd go for walks in the countryside, play music, meet up with other pirate groups. But they were definitely against the authoritarianism, the adult-imposed authoritarianism of the Hitler Youth. Hitler Youth patrols were taunted, they were teased, insults would be called out, and sometimes even beaten up. Edelweiss pirates would harass and beat up Hitler Youth members. Well, this obviously attracted the attention of the authorities, and there was indeed a rather harsh crackdown on the pirates. In particular, some members were warned, and in Cologne, a number of the Cologne pirates were rounded up after an incident, and one of them, a 16-year-old, Barton Schenk, was indeed hanged in November of 1944. So the authorities did crack down on the activities of the Edelweiss pirates. The Leipzig Mythen, similar in some ways to the Edelweiss pirates, but of a different background, many of them. Mostly of working class origin. Their parents were socialist, and many of the young people followed their parents' socialist ideas and ideology. So in that way would of course be opposed to the Nazis, particularly in Leipzig, a strong area, although there were 1,500 various youth gangs around Germany. The swing movement is the third movement we're going to briefly look at. That was mostly young middle-class Germans, and it was less of an active opposition in the manner of the Edelweiss Pirates and the Leipzig Mythen. It was more that they shunned the idea of being told to listen to Wagner and other German nationalist music. They far preferred what I guess would have been the hip-hop or alternative music of its day. They listened to American jazz and swing, which was very much something the Nazis disapproved of. But the swing movement, they were young people, they didn't want to be told what music they could and could not listen to. And there were many groups in Hamburg, Kiel, Berlin, Frankfurt, Dresden, many groups around Germany. The Nazis, in fact, then banned live performances of jazz and swing music. So there's basically the scene went underground. Of course, when you ban something, in many ways, it can appear to be more desirable and more cool. So in summary, education was fundamentally altered. It was aimed at indoctrination, the curriculum, examples you should be able to give from history or mathematics or biology. The Hitler Youth and the BDM, you should be able to describe their activities, why they were popular, why they became less popular, what activities they did. You should be able to describe the Edelweiss Pirates, the Leipzig Mythen, and the Swing Movement. Well, thank you very much for listening.